The House on 92nd Street from 1945 was an enjoyable spy film featuring a double agent with the FBI who was infiltrating a German spy ring during the Second World War. And it was a really good film. It starred William Eythe, Signe Hasso, Lloyd Nolan, Leo G. Carroll, and a bunch of other familiar faces. I'll summarize the story of the film and then offer some closing thoughts.
Where have you been?
I just came from the office.
Where were you last night?
The radio station?
Weren't you supposed to meet Klein last night?
Yeah, I met him.
So the film opens up and we have a narrator telling us about these Nazi spies who are infiltrating the U.S. and the efforts of the FBI during the war and so on. Now the film opens strongly as a documentary, talking about the tireless efforts of the FBI. Maybe it lays it on a little strong. I mean, listen to the music and hear for yourself. The FBI, vigilant, tireless, implacable in their war with Germany. We see a lot of footage of actual special agents working, their research and high-tech abilities and so on. Now, meanwhile, the character of Bill Diedrich, who's played by actor William Eythe, he's a college student of German descent, and he's approached by some Germans to go and work for them as a spy. Well, he tells the FBI about this, and they in turn ask him to become a double agent. He offers his services and soon goes undercover. So he's in Hamburg and he goes to the school for spies there where he is trained in the art of being a spy.
Like Dietrich, many of his classmates had been recruited in the United States. And back to the United States they would go when they were properly equipped.
So soon we learn from the narrator about the Christopher case. In New York, there's a suspicious-looking fellow who is hit by a car, and as he lays there dying, someone mysteriously kind of creeps up and takes his briefcase away. Now, this man is taken to the hospital, and hey, is that Gary Oldman? Well, anyhow, the patient dies in transport, so hey, it's the 1940s, the medic lights up with the smoke. I love it. They look through the guy's papers, and they find a notebook filled with German writing, so they decide to bring this up with the FBI. And soon enough, we get to the character, Inspector George Briggs, played by actor Lloyd Nolan. Nolan actually played the same character, the same inspector in the last film I reviewed, The Street with No Name. I think it's kind of cool that they have the same character again. Well, looking over the papers of this German guy that died, there's mention of a Process 97. And this troubles Briggs because Process 97 is the secret U.S. military plan to develop the atomic bomb. Now, the character Diedrich, he's been trained in Germany and he finishes and he returns to New York. Briggs helps him with getting set up in a decoy office so he can get to work. Now, Diedrich contacts Elsa Gebhardt, played by actress Signe Hasso. She's a German agent and she's at her place on 92nd Street. She brings him in to meet with some of the other spies. There's a Max Coburg, played by actor Harry Belliver, who's been in some other films I've reviewed. Konrad Arnoff, played by Hero Meller, and also a Joanna Schmidt, who was played by Lydia St. Clair, who in a weird way kind of reminded me of Frau Farbacina from Austin Powers. Arming the laser! Well, yeah, they all seem very suspicious of Diedrich.
What do you think, Elsa?
He has good credentials, but...
How do we know? They look good, so what? No. No, I don't trust that guy. He knows too much.
Well, Diedrich is at his home when Colonel Hammerson arrives. He's played by legendary actor Leo G. Carroll. He's usually in a lot of Alfred Hitchcock films. And after making an introduction, he goes snooping around his house, you know, checking his eyebrows in the mirror or that sort of thing. Diedrich drops the name of Mr. Christopher, but the Colonel won't reveal anything. But the Colonel takes him to meet with Adolf Klein, played by actor Alfred Linder, and there's this momentary distraction at their meeting as they have to deal with a very drunken informant. And, well, we learned pretty early on that these guys don't mess around. They get him beaten up and dumped on a train track. kind of leaves his fate to the imagination, but yeah. Diedrich continues to talk with Klein and mentions Mr. Christopher, but again, no information, no movement on that. He leaves and gets a very cold send-off.
Good night, Klein.
I don't even know you.
Well, Diedrich goes to meet with Elsa and is given some papers to transmit. And he asks if she wants a smoke, but she says she doesn't. And it's hard to believe. In the 1940s, I think everybody smoked back then. But he sees that there's a cigarette with lipstick in an ashtray, and he secretly grabs it. So he sends this off, and the papers from Elsa to Briggs at the FBI. And they bring in this physicist who looks at the papers that Diedrich sent in and determine that, yes, indeed, the Germans know about Project 97. The Feds study this cigarette lipstick with some high-tech devices. Hey, it's like a 1940s CSI show. They track down the lipstick to 98 different beauty parlors in and around New York City. If I was the investigator here, I could just ask my wife about the lipstick. She could probably track it to the local Ulta. But in any case, by using their detective skills, they are able to find at one of these beauty shops a woman, and they bring her in for questioning. And it's here that Inspector Briggs gives her the Joe Friday treatment to find out what's going on and determines that she is actually a sleeper agent.
But you made one mistake. You took the trouble of becoming an American citizen. And that, Miss Bodja, makes you a traitor.
His questioning leads them to Charles Ogden Roper. He's a scientist from whom this information is being smuggled. But how, Briggs wonders, are they doing it? And are you paying attention to all these details? Because there's going to be a quiz at the end of the review. The next day, the FBI intercept an unusual message from Germany that is relayed to Diedrich. Liquidate Gidach Nick Unschler. Oh no, not Gidach Nick Unschler. And to any German viewers who may be watching my channel, I apologize. I only really speak English, a little bit of high school Spanish, and cat. And that's about it. So I apologize if I've mangled any of the German in and throughout this review, because there will be some more German coming up soon. Anyhow, Briggs messages Diedrich to let him know that his life might be in danger. Well, we cut over to the George Washington Bridge. George Washington Bridge, George Washington, Washington Bridge. A car races through the wrong way and gets pulled over by some cops. It's Diedrich, and he is incarcerated. But this is part of his scheme. When he asks for his lawyer, he requests Briggs. And from the safety of being behind bars, he gives an update on the message that they received. The word Gidach nicht Unschler, Diedrich explains, can refer to a performer who accomplishes feats of memory. Well, Briggs arranges for his bail and tells Diedrich to send out his messages. Now, the FBI, they're in pursuit of Roper, and finally we cut to his character. And hey, he's played by Gene Lockhart. He's been in several films I've reviewed, but most recently he was the judge in Miracle on 34th Street. Briggs plays tough cops here and just rips into this Roper guy, breaks him down, and finds out that, yes, he was the one sneaking out information. So the FBI stake out Lang's bookshop and determine that Christopher was this man that was seen at Elsa's building. Now, meanwhile, Elsa receives a letter with this coded message and learns that Diedrich had given her forged information. They go to his place, determine that his radio equipment couldn't actually even reach Hamburg. So they bring him back where he's beaten up, drugged, and questioned. Now, Elsa really turns ice cold here, and she wants information. Now, the FBI, they're on the move, but will they be able to stop these forces of evil? Well, with only a few minutes left here, you know my policy. I don't give the final spoilers. But for a film with a fairly slow pace for the most part, it really picks up by that last scene. It has a very exciting conclusion that you'll want to see for yourself. So some closing thoughts. The House on 92nd Street is produced by 20th Century Fox and directed by Henry Hathaway. He's a director. I've seen a number of his films. They're all great. He directed Kiss of Death with Victor Mature, and I reviewed that not long ago on the channel. This movie received an Academy Award nomination for Charles G. Booth's original story. Now, my initial thoughts on this film was that it was an entertaining spy film, maybe a little heady and maybe more of a slower pace with a little more dialogue and character interactions, but I still thought it was great. It was based on a real story with real history involved, and I thought that was pretty cool. It's maybe more on the brainy side, and the pacing does pick up by the end of the film. But to be honest, it's a little different than some of the action films I've been watching recently, a lot of the hard-edged crime movies. But if I'm really honest with myself, I'm always hard-pressed to find any film from this era that I don't enjoy at some level. And I did like the format here. The narrator is driving the story of the man undercover and the wartime investigation that's going on. But that being said, when something is done in a straightforward documentary-style narration in a film like this, I will admit, maybe you can take the edge off just a little bit. Because, if you really think about it, it sort of clues you into the fact that, no matter how dark the film may go, we kind of know we're going to win at the end of the film. We sort of know we won the war. So it's not like the film is going to end with a narrator saying, well, I guess I didn't see that coming. Do you see what I mean? When it's a documentary style and there's a narration involved, maybe it takes the edge off a little bit, but maybe that's just me. Now let me address the depiction of the FBI in this film. So the film features real FBI agents in supporting roles with the cooperation of J. Edgar Hoover, and to be fair, the film can maybe come across a little strong-armed with depicting the FBI as rah-rah, hooray for the FBI as the hero of the story. And okay, understandably, this was the 1940s. It was a different era, and maybe it goes a little heavy on that narrative, but I'm good with it. Look, I've grown up on a diet of movies and shows where the FBI is traditionally depicted in more of a suspicious, duplicitous way. For crying out loud, I used to watch The X-Files, and that was one of the central premises of the show, that the FBI was this organization of shadowy, mysterious characters, hiding the existence of extraterrestrials and so on. So I've watched enough movies where it's a negative light, and now here's this film in the 1940s with the FBI in a very positive light. So all I'll say is this. Film can feel like it's cheerleading for the FBI, and in a way it does. But don't get tripped up on that. The film has a lot going for it. It's got a gripping spy drama story. It's got some great acting. And, I wouldn't go as far as calling it propaganda. But watch the film for yourself, and you can decide. Now, I've not seen actor William Eythe before, but I enjoyed him here in this film as the heroic lead. I was reading about his background, and it sounds like as an actor, the studios wanted him to be another Tyrone Power, with his charm and his looks. But that really wasn't to be the case. His career was actually sort of short-lived. It said that he didn't really follow the strictest of rules of studio head Darryl F. Zanuck, and this really impacted his career in the long run. He'd misbehave and either be suspended or farmed out to England to do a B film as a punishment for his rebellious nature. His career started to ebb in the post-war years, and he struggled with alcohol abuse and related arrests that, naturally would hit the tabloids. His health failed, and he was hospitalized for acute hepatitis and died 10 days later in January 1957 at only the age of 38. Signe Hasso was also very impressive in this film. She's a very lovely actress, but note, there's no romance in this film at all. Even though some of the movie promotional material, the posters and pictures, might kind of imply it, it's not there. And she is all dedicated to her spy task. And when she barks orders at her crony, they all scramble to obey. And when it's time to get information from Diedrich near the end of the film, wow, there's no nonsense here at all. Frankly, she is a very frightening character when she's prepping a syringe to juice up the poor beaten guy to get information out of him. And it's interesting, too, in thinking about it, I don't think you see her smile once in the film. It's cold as ice and just brilliantly acted. Really liked her performance in this film. And Lloyd Nolan, again, was excellent. He usually plays an investigator or detective in films like this. And I always appreciate his no-nonsense Joe Friday approach. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of his films in the future. Now, I say this all the time, but I love location footage in old movies, and this film features generous footage of New York City, Long Island, Washington, D.C., even shows the federal agents at work within the Bureau's headquarters. It all adds to the authentic feel of the movie. But alas, I think that the actual house on 93rd Street, which was apparently situated as a real building on 55 East 93rd Street, no longer exists. Oh well. The working titles of this film were actually Now It Can Be Told, Hamburg 777, and Private Line to Berchtesgaden. Thank goodness they didn't call it Private Line to Berchtesgaden because, again, I will mangle my pronunciation and someone will leave a comment that I mispronounced Berchtesgaden. You know, guys, I do these movie reviews as a hobby, right? I do this as a lark. I test software for a living. And this channel is just because I love old films and I love to go exploring. I have no editorial team. So, you know, as the saying goes, if I mess up, don't belittle, but help educate me. I'm just learning as I go and I'm having a good time. So, anyhow, I've rambled on enough. That's The House on 93rd Street from 1945. I thought it was a very enjoyable spy film, a lot of good acting, very exciting ending, and it's worth checking out. Okay, so you're still here, so a random observation, but I just think it's really satisfying how this old bookshop would wrap up books. I mean, that's just something you don't see anymore.